weird. It's like this weird delay. How is it? It's bizarre.
Yeah, it is. G'day Fanatics, Lenny here, and I am with Will Pearce, who is basically our in-house turf scientist. If you want to tell us a bit about yourself, Will?
Yeah. So I studied plant and soil science at UQ locally, and then did an undergrad honours on the wear tolerance of green creatures, and that was Australian genotypes, so grasses selected around Australia. And worked for Queensland Government for a short while, and then for turf industry levy funded projects, and with STRI for about 4.5 years as the research manager.
Sports Turf Research Institute.
Yep, and so I ran about 1 hectare of turf research plots, so anything from seeded cooch trials to amendment trials to APVMA registrations to you name it, trials for Wimbledon, trials for Lawn Solutions Australia.
St Andrews at one stage.
Yep, Scots, Yates, wicking bed based irrigation systems for turf. So yeah, pretty diverse background, and now I work for ICL Specialty Fertilisers, which are the same guys behind the brand name you would know of Osmocote.
Osmocote, yep. And as far as I know, ICL is basically the only fert company that does every stage of they mine their own products.
Yep.
They do their own research, they put their own stuff together. So from the actual sourcing of the raw ingredients, they do the whole scenario, I suppose.
Yeah. So what makes ICL interesting is they're the biggest miner of potassiums and phosphates in the world, and it's something, admittedly, before I even started working for ICL, I didn't really think about that. The fert's got to come from somewhere that you're putting out on your home lawn.
Yep.
And predominance of the potassium and phosphate bases that you put out, whether they're muriate of potash or potassium sulfate, most of them have an origination in an ICL mine. And we've got some really interesting technologies then that we bring from the mines into the fertiliser technology.
Nice. So as a young fella, what got you into grass? Or the love of grass that wanted to research it?
Probably not much too different from all the fanatics out there. I figured I loved it that much. My dad always had a Scotty and used to mow Queensland blue cooch. I used to just...
Your dad's a school teacher, was a principal at school?
Yeah, he was a school principal out at, he was Ferning Hills and then Albany Creek State School for 10, 15 years or so.
Yep.
And yeah, so he always had a blue cooch lawn and used to mow that with a Scotty, and then I started mowing that when I was young.
Yep.
And thought, how good's this? And kind of thought, why can't I make it my career?
Yeah, nice. Why not? They say if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah, 100%. Like, to give you an idea, a week in, like my last week, for example, I spent a day on a turf farm assessing a trial of a new fertiliser and how it affects zoysia performance when you lay it as freshly cut turf.
Yep.
So I spent the day collecting soil cores, and then the last couple of days I was pressure washing the dirt off the cores.
Yeah, nice.
And then weighing the fresh roots. So, it's anything from there to, going to conferences and talking to people about new technologies and different
golf
ideas.
Courses and
Yep.
football stadiums and
Yep.
all of that. So it's at home. You're married to the lovely Amelia and got little Archie.
Yep.
And a dog. I can't remember the dog's name.
Dougie. And Bo. So we got 2 dogs.
2 dogs, Dougie and Bo.
Yep.
What varieties? Because I know you change your turf variety probably more often than Rusty shaves.
Yeah. Well.
What are you running currently? Because I know you've recently changed your front.
Yep.
Stole it off Albie.
Yeah.
Albie had the lovely striped up Sir Walter lawn that he's changed to Agridark.
Yep.
So we'll pinch some of that.
I've got the claim to fame of the best buffalo lawn, or former best buffalo lawn in Australia, and now it's on my front lawn. I originally had shade tuff in that position because it was under a shade of a poinciana, but I changed from shade tuff purely because of the wear. We used to get a lot of, it's a footpath, but there's not a footpath there, but a lot of people walk there.
Yeah.
And the shade tuff just doesn't have the recovery. So I switched that over to Sir Walter. Down the side of my house, I have Sir Grange.
Yep.
And that only gets about 2 hours of sun, but it doesn't get a lot of wear. I kind of keep it away from the dogs.
Yep.
And out the back, I have Grand Prix, which is just common, it's a cooch type, and that's the same cooch that they did the second runway at the airport with just recently.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, I think they laid about 1 million square metres of turf.
That's an amber. Was it an amber?
Yeah, I think,
Hugo.
I think there was an article in the paper.
Hugo got his head on in the paper.
Yeah, yeah.
Well done, Hugo.
Top
job.
I think one of the key reasons they went with Grand Prix was the low seed head production of the plant, and given a low seed head, the potential for less bird feeding, and then ultimately less bird strike potential on the airplane.
Yeah, I suppose that's pretty important. So upkeep on your lawn at home. You're a turf scientist. Do you run trials using your own turf, or not really?
Yes.
You're not home enough to do that?
Oh, look, my role's national, so I'm probably not home enough at the moment to do it. But when I am home, I do muck around a lot. I just can't help myself. I go at, stupid rates with chemicals and things.
Just to see what happens.
Just to see.
You tell me to go stupid rates with chemicals too.
Yeah.
And but Will said so.
Look, I find, like, to give you an idea, I've changed my back lawn 6 times in 5 years. And it's not so much that I'm not happy with the way the lawn's performing, it's more I just want to try something else.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably just, I want to try different things.
So what mower are you running? What are you running?
You've
got a greens mower at some hidden under there some stage.
I've got a greens mower, Jake greens mower under there. I've got a Rover 45, which has got a 10 blade.
Yeah.
I've got a Scotty 6 blade.
Yeah.
And then I just got the old Honda HRU 19-inch Buffalo cut rotary, which at the moment I'm mowing out the front and down the side with it, but once I get the cutting heights under wraps, it's to the 6 blade.
Yep.
Reason for the 6 blade is the height I'll be cutting at, the speed, like the clip rate needs to be lower for buffalo and the Zoys are at a higher cutting height, so I've got the 6 blade on those.
So you only really need 8-10 more blades if you're getting sort of underneath 10 mil.
Sub 10, There's no point.
If you're above 10 mil, 6 blade is absolutely perfect. And
the beauty is I've got my neighbour, I look after her lawn, which is predominantly Queensland blue cooch. So I get the joys of pretty much predominance of the warm season grasses. The only kind of 2, maybe 3 big players I don't have near me are just like Kikuyu, Zoysia japonica, so Empire. Or thinking about it, let me think about this. Probably a hybrid coach, so like a Tiff Tough or a Lat or something. Yeah.
Kikuyu, as we all know, is, I suppose, well, some of you might not know, doesn't do well in southeast Queensland because it doesn't like the humidity. Yeah,
it's notorious. Look, I think managed right, Kikuyu is the kind of plant that needs a really deep soil depth. And predominance of home lawns, even though they've got relatively deep soil, Kike needs a pretty sandy soil profile to grow successful in the humidity. And when it doesn't set deep roots, it gets disease, particularly leaf spot in those kind of much more warm months. So starting from now through till say February and mid-March, it gets a lot of leaf spot. If you've got kind of kike struggling from shallow roots. So you'll find that probably predominantly in SEQ, common cooch, hybrid cooch, Queensland blue, buff, and Zoysia do well.
That's what I like. That's what I see around. I don't come across Kikuyu at all.
And they're all horses for courses. Probably dependent on how much maintenance people want. You can have a hybrid like this and cut it really high and have not a lot of maintenance, but still have a fair chunk of work to do on the other side of spring. To get it back to something worthwhile.
So I'm not a 10 mil man. I'm more of a 15 to 18 sort of. I like 15 to 18.
Yeah, and see that's like you can get away with like the once a week mow with a hybrid.
Just pre-mowed up.
Well, yeah, and to be fair, like I've even cut sub 10 mil with the correct growing degree days on pre-mow and only had to mow once a week. So, you know, I think if you have a good program and you stick to it, you can definitely save yourself a lot of work.
Yep.
On your lawn.
But that's the key, is just get a program and stick to the program. I think for a lot of fanatics, you find that they listen to 10 different people rather than and try 10 different things rather than just stick one course of action and just see that through. And if it works for you, then keep doing it. If not, it doesn't work, then try something different. There's a lot of voices giving their opinion, which is great, but you maybe don't listen to every opinion. Just try and, you know, if you like what one guy is saying, like, then just stick with that. Or if someone's giving out a program, then stick to that program. Don't deviate from that.
I think so. Like programs are designed because they're a program, and if you do half the program, you're only going to get half the result.
Yeah.
And I would say probably the best advice you could ever give to like anyone running a home lawn is your soil is the biggest thing of importance.
Oh, get it tested. Get a proper soil test. Spend the money, get a proper soil test, and you will know from that where your soil is at and what you need to do to correct it to get your because your soil is the key. Grass won't grow unless the soil is right.
Yeah, and the other thing, like, you can get a lot of insight just from the soil test, not only nutritionally but also from the particle size distribution, and all that is a fancy word for the granule sizings of your lawn. So if it's sand or clay or silt, like to give you an idea, like a silty clay soil won't need as much water as a quite high percentage sand soil.
Yeah.
So that will give you a heap of insight into how to irrigate your turf as well.
Yeah.
And you can work out basically over a couple of weeks with a specific soil type how much you should be watering.
Yeah.
So probably soil type's the biggest number one, and then everything kind of comes off that.
So the expense of getting a proper soil test actually saves you money down the track.
I think a full suite soil test is anything from $120 to $160, and that'll give you a cation exchange, which is basically the soil's ability to hang on to any of the soil elements that are positively charged. So you're thinking things like potassium, calcium, magnesium, but it'll also tell you if there's sodium, so salt accumulating in your soil profile.
Yeah.
It'll tell you your percentage of organic matter.
I'm getting old, that hurt.
Yeah, so the soil will probably, it's money well spent, and it'll if you're going the more permanent route, it'll set you up for years and years to come.
Yeah.
And I know it's probably people will go and spend $80 on a bag of fur, but the soil test is double that, and it'll tell you exactly what.
Yeah. What, like you spend $80 on a fert that. That's the rescue chopper. I don't know, but I think they do. But that's the route into the PA hospital. That's the only thing that flies over here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Is that helicopter?
So it's just quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So yeah, you'll spend $80 on a fert, but it might not be the right fert. Spend the 150, let's say 150 round numbers, on a proper soil test, and that'll give you need this, you need that, and then you can put the right fert into the ground.
You tend to find even like if you corroborated soil tests, like if a large group of fanatics got soil tests and posted them on the page, like, and I won't say they will, but if they did, you'd start to see trends. So southeast Queensland, when we do get rain's in acidifier, so the pH would probably be lower than, it's probably 5 to 6 at times.
Yep.
And what comes with that is the availability of certain cations. So you'd probably find things like calcium would be low.
Yep.
So an obvious one in the recommendation of the soil test would be amending the line at renovation.
Yep. So I remember when Rusty and I went to Stadium Australia, and shout out to Damien and Logs, g'day, and all the other boys. They do a proper soil test every month on multiple spots, and they do a pH test weekly.
Yep.
And they record all the results, and they can see trends in the turf and the soil and all the sand and what it's all doing. And they get to the extent where they weigh the grass clippings to see exactly how much nitrogen they're putting down as to how much results they're getting out of the nitrogen.
Yep.
You know, leaf material collected.
There's some really
Bloody
interesting...
lunatics, you lot. You lunatics.
There's some really interesting ways of looking at soil tests. Like, there's a few ways of looking at soil tests. There's the base saturation, which measures the percentage of cations in relation to each other. So, and then there's MLSN, which is a really interesting way, and it's looking at the minimum level for sustainable nutrition. And essentially, that was developed through the University of California, and they put 7,000 soil tests together, and they looked at what the surface quality of the turf grass was, and what they were able to work out was a lot of the time in even SLAN, so SLAN gives you parts per million in actuals, base saturation will give you the ratios. So base saturation will recommend much higher amounts than a SLAN test, and SLAN will recommend you like slightly less but more than, say, what MLSN soil tests will do. And so what they're able to work out is we're probably feeding turf grass too much.
That's evident in a lot of, like I'll see Japonica or Empire Zoysial lawns, and they're just so thick they're just being fed as if they're cooch. What's wrong with my turf? When you overfed it.
I think that's the thing. Like, people don't look at quality of fert and at the type of fert that we should select based on our climate and our soil type. So, if you're in a relatively heavy clay soil, then you probably can get away with water-soluble ferts because that soil holds a lot of clay and the cation exchange is high. But if we're in like a landscape or quite a sandy soil, then controlled release fertilizers and slow release fertilizers make sense. So controlled release is a polymer sulfur coating or a straight polymer coated fert. And once there's moisture around the granule, the nitrogen will drip feed out of the granule over a set period, and it's generally stated on the pack.
It's usually temperature controlled.
No,
not always.
No, polyS isn't temperature controlled. It's entirely to do with the coating thickness. So the thicker the coating, the longer the longevity. So to give you an idea, like if you had an Osmocote 9 to 12 month as opposed to an Osmocote 12 to 14, the 9 to 12 will have a thinner coating on it. And
that's where the price of a lot of these ferts is it's in the coating of the material.
And the coating obviously takes up weight. So what you see with control release fert is we're very analysis driven, and we think the higher the nitrogen, the phosphorus and potassium, the better the quality of the fert. But it's actually sometimes the actual technology that delivers the NPK. So if you're delivering, I don't know, 10-1-8 over 12 months as opposed to 10-1-8 over 3 weeks, you've got a completely different fert. And I'd say that 10-1-8 over 12 months is probably more suited to, say, Zoysian nutrition. So a control release fert that almost mimics the way that turf grass plant uptakes fertilizer makes more sense in that instance. But then if you're going with a grow-in, you probably want to deliver fert more regularly, short, sharp bursts. So look at water soluble, but look at dropping your rates, but putting on more applications.
So instead of doing 100 mil once a month, you do 25 mil weekly. And just do that. That's what I've been doing.
It's interesting with ferts, and like a lot of chemicals, they all have a biodegradation period. And what you see is most of the label recommendations are totally dependent on biodegradation. So like a wetting agent, for example, it might be 10 litres a hectare monthly. It's because the company knows that after about a month, that wetting agent is completely degraded in the soil. But you'll find you'll get more longevity at going at 5 litres a hectare every 2 weeks. Because of the way that things biodegrade,
it's that graph.
They tail off.
You're
more
topping
quickly.
up as the last one's starting to go down.
And it's the same concept with primo and growing degree dates. So like you're kind of drip feeding the plant. That's why predominantly slow and control release make a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, you see a lot of guys now using the controlled release 3 month granular, and they're topping up with a liquid iron spray over the top.
Yep.
Liquid fert iron combo over the top.
Yep.
I think sometimes they're overdoing it.
Yeah,
Sell or not
I think
out.
so. And you got to think about the source of foliar spray, because generally, like, if you're going with, say, iron sulfate, you're spraying it regularly,
Yep.
it is an acidifier. Sulfate-based ferts do acidify.
The GoPro just went flat. That's all right. We've still got the other one going.
We're on.
It's still good.
Yeah,
Still
so
good.
even so you're talking about the guys at Sydney Football Stadium pH testing regularly. They'll also be able to benchmark when they apply fertiliser what effect it has on pH.
Yep.
And so for example, certain ferts might be have a higher salt index, but have a higher potential to buffer the soil. Either way.
The good thing about those guys is they don't keep it a secret.
Yeah.
If you want to know something, they happily show you.
Yeah.
This is what we use. This is how often we use it. These are the results we get. This is how we do the testing. They're big on sharing, because they want everyone to have better planting services. It's like a community sort of thing. They want to foster and encourage. It's brilliant. Best day ever.
Yeah.
It's absolutely the best day
I
ever.
think that's what's so good is when everyone shares information. 10 heads are better than one.
Yeah.
So there may be someone in that pack that has a way of dealing with that problem that hasn't been discussed before.
Yep.
And actually, I watched a really interesting podcast, massive tangent, but it was talking about in the scientific fraternity, this bloke was working on top classified information, and they were only allowed to work in pairs, but they weren't allowed to talk to other groups working on the same project.
Yep.
And this scientist was saying that projects would stagnate for long periods of time because they weren't allowed to cross-reference and talk to each other. So it just shows the power of community and people in coming up with solutions.
You get into a bit of YouTube? Do you watch any YouTube channels apart from the Fanatics?
Yeah. I'm a massive podcast listener and watcher.
Yep. What do you get into?
I love a bit of Joe Rogan. It's really
Joe
interesting.
Rogan, yeah.
I like Professor Brian Cox's gear.
Yep. What's up, buddy?
Are you filming?
Yep. What do you want?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'll be back.
Okay. Any turf ones you get into?
Yeah, I've been listening to a bit of the Carl Campbell Nadim's ones. So Nadim has you get onto Nadim's he shares it
Behind
on
the turf, is it? Behind the turf.
Yeah. And so he talks to a lot of prominent guys in the States.
Yeah. You just need, Nadim, you need to invest in a microphone.
Yeah.
Well, we're not using one here though. So
the other thing that I do is I do read a lot. I go on to there's a turf grass information file out of Michigan State University, and they have collated all the information from all the other universities in the US.
Yep.
And there's just anything turf grass related, whether it's the actual turf itself or whether it's sports injuries on different turf surfaces, looking at synthetic or
Didn't they
artificial.
cop a caning recently?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I think the most recent stats coming out, it's something like it's in the 80th percentile of NFL players not wanting to play on artificial turf.
Yeah.
And look, admittedly, like you look at a lot of studies, and what it does find is because of the sticking power or the structure of the material, there is a higher potential for non-contact ground-related injuries, so things like ACLs and MCLs, and
because it doesn't have the give.
Yeah, and I've played on the stuff myself. You can feel it. I've done an ACL on a natural turf field before.
Yeah.
But when I've played on synthetic, you can actually feel the grip compared to a natural turf surface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. So you don't follow the big trend of American YouTube grass guys, lawnmower guys, all that sort of stuff.
Not too much. It's more, given the scientific background, I'm more like reading about what people are doing.
There is a guy you might enjoy. His name's Matt Martin. Might send you a link, but he does a lot of a more scientific approach to the DIY market.
Yeah,
You might check it out.
that'd be worthwhile.
Yeah, you might look in and go, yeah.
No, I think there's always stuff to be learned.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Cool. How's my growing going? He's the supervisor of my growing.
It's going pretty good. I think
The big issue was we did it start of winter.
I think that's the thing. Timing's everything with turf grass. So this was sprigged. Can't remember what rate we went at. I'd say we probably went at about 20%.
It's nearly 20%.
Yeah. So it would have been about 20% in terms of. But we did it. What was it? April or something.
It was April. Yeah.
It got sprigged in April, and in the main area you're probably at 90%. And then it's just minor areas that probably just struggle from shade a little bit here and there. But, this grass too also handles a fair bit. Like it kind of thrives in humid conditions, given where it was bred.
Yep.
So I think once we start to see the humidity start to happen in Brizzy,
Because it hasn't really got humid yet, has it?
No, it's
You're starting to
been
see a little bit of rain here and there, but it'd just be good to see a couple of cyclones come down the coast.
I tell you what's interesting was I was looking at the bomb data last week, and we only had a little bit of rain on the weekend, but as it stands, we are at our driest year
So far.
on record in Brisbane since 1999. And the only reason I'm saying 1999 is because the data only goes back that far on bomb. Like they have previous years, but that's been put into the historical database. So I think it was 408 mils, and the nearest was 2004, which was about 100 mils more than that.
Wow. Okay. So hopefully we've got some more coming. That'd be really good. Don't know what else to ask you, really. Any future lawn plans going forward?
Look, I oversowed my lawn with ryegrass, and look, the ryegrass that I selected, I think there's a bit of a allelopathy with rye and cooch. I think the rye takes certain cultivars of cooch back a fair bit. And it's been slow to get going, so really just regrowing my Grand Prix back in the backyard. Probably about 80% cover now. So.
And how long until you change dirt type again?
just waiting till those new zoysias come out. There's some new greens grass zoysias that are pretty impressive. So if you get online, have a look at Primo zoysia. You can cut it like a green, but it's got the traits of a zoysia in that you're not cutting 4 times a week.
That's got to be a good thing for golf courses going forward.
I think so. Look, I think with all these new grasses, the biggest thing is getting runs on the board.
Yeah.
All the grasses that have done well, generally the oldies but goodies like the wintergreens, the Santa Anas.
Yeah. I think if we did this again, I'd go Santa Ana again. Because we did Santa Ana last time, and I loved it. It was more aggressive growing than this.
Yeah. And we were talking about it before, but I was talking to Lenny about just the speed of growth of different grasses. And Santa Ana does have more apical dominance, which means it sends out runners much further and spreads from runners much more readily and quickly.
So from each node, it could have
up to five more runners
than a hybrid.
So to give you an idea, wintergreen, for example, is extremely apically dominant. So that's why you see such quick results post renovation. It comes back, 2 weeks and people are full cover.
Yeah.
And things like zoysia are much slower. They tend to grow more from rhizomes than most.
Yeah, okay.
And so the growth habit of grass also gives you insight into how to renovate it properly. So that's why, a zoysia matrali should never go too aggressive. You should always be lightly renovating it through the summer.
Yeah.
Like nipping it, but not destroying it.
Yeah.
You think of zoysia, it kind of grows much similar to bamboo. It's got hollow stems.
Yeah.
You cut those hollow stems, it takes a lot for it to come back from those hollow stems. So it's much similar in terms of its recovery.
There you go. Maybe I won't drop the Scarifier so deep next time.
probably more a grooming grass or like a verticut, a light verticut. This grass is very fine and upright. So I think given the time to thatch up, it is kind of, you do have to be aggressive. But like all things, it's still very immature in terms of how old it is. And you can never, it's difficult to benchmark results with renovations, like how fast they come back. Because everyone's
so many different
lawns,
climatic
conditions, day lengths, but also
soil test.
yes, soil types, nutrition existing in the soil.
Because apparently, like our mate next door said, under here is a heap of old ash from Ipswich
And
mines.
so
and
this
stuff,
would
so
drain extremely quickly.
it does, yeah. The word is that it used to have like an old creek through here,
Yeah, okay.
which is why the house is built so far back in the block.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So, like I know, I'm familiar with some ash fields around Brisbane. They have extremely high drainage rates for just a community sports field, and the water expense is high. So things like when they do have the opportunity to do a really heavy renovation, looking at the correct amendments to kind of more or less slow that infiltration rate down, so they can save money on water. Look at a wetting agent program, because you can visually see dry patch on them when, you know, this time of year when the water becomes, you know, the sprinklers running and the community starts complaining. Look, I think given it's been so dry, hopefully there's rain around the corner, but I think, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we go on a water restriction.
If that happens, what do? Raise the cut height.
Raising cut height, but also being more efficient and smart with how we use wetting agents.
Because a lot of wetting agents can really save you, what, 30%?
30 to 40% used correctly. All wetting agents, there is a lot of wetting agents on the market. They all have different traits. It's just how they're formulated and the quality of the polymer as to how well they work. I like to think Connie three-way wetting agents work extremely well. So things that help the water penetrate off the surface. But given that they help the water penetrate off the surface, they also help the water penetrate through into your soil more effectively. And then they have a surfactant which will actually break the hydrogen bonds or spread the load of each droplet.
So if your soil is a little bit hydrophobic, soil is a go.
Absolutely. And generally it's a dosage thing. So the longevity of a wetting agent is totally related to the dosage. So people go, oh, you know, Viagra lasts 3 months. It's because you're going at 40 to 50 litres a hectare. If you go at a wetting agent at 10, it'll probably only last a month or thereabouts. So you've got to look at what you're trying to achieve. If you haven't used a wetting agent and you know your soil's hydrophobic, then you probably have to go at a higher rate.
So all right. So there's a couple of tips for those in water trouble, water restricted areas, wetting agents, and raise your cut height a bit. So all right. Well, thanks, Will. Thanks for chewing the thatch with us.
No worries.
If you are not a scientific person, I hope you didn't get a headache. I usually get a headache when I talk to Will because he's super grass smart. So all right. Thanks. See ya.